breaking news to bring you out of California, where we are learning that 5 people have been killed in a helicopter crash in Calabasas.
The county coroner is out with the official causes of death for the 4 people killed in that fierce house fire in late October.
Dozens of business owners faced with another hardship in what has already been a nightmare of a year.
Elsewhere, police have released photos of the person who robbed a bank in the Foothill Ranch area yesterday.
Arson investigators working to find out how this building
who were caught on camera opening fire in broad daylight
have been found dead. An investigation is underway into the deaths of 3 American women who were found dead.
At noon, Bronny James, the teenage son of LeBron James, is recovering after going into cardiac arrest.
The United States is warning about an Egyptian military building.
Claim numbers are in.
It shows the moment of impact between the aeroplane and the
prison
helicopter.
fire in the Democratic Republic of Congo have told the BBC they want justice.
There was an outpouring of grief as the bodies of 4 dead hostages
For the funerals of Sherry Beavis and her 2 young children, Ariel and
It is now 89 seconds to midnight.
The news. In a world saturated with information, the stories we consume shape our perception of the world around us. But what happens when the headlines that dominate our screens and conversations are overwhelmingly negative? Studies state that with every negative word in a news story, the click rate increases by a factor of 2.3%. This poses a significantly interesting question. Why does negative news pique human interest?
Hi, my name is Joe Birch, and I'm the local news anchor at WMC. Human nature, the human curiosity, wants to know what's going on in their environment. It just so works out that journalists have sort of this proclivity to report what's negative.
Is it that stations need to be there to inform, or do they need to be there to attract? It's often observed that certain trends in media coverage align with viewer engagement. For instance, research suggests that for each positive word in a headline, click rate is decreased by a factor of 1%. This dynamic could offer some perspective on why news content can seem like it leans toward a more gloomy tone, as it may resonate more strongly with audience behavior and interests. Therefore, it is often opportune for news stations and businesses to highlight more negative news because it is more profitable.
My name is Lauren Reedy, and I am the owner and principal storyteller at Forever Ready Productions. But they say, it bleeds, it leads. And the trends online show that people click on the things that are negative, and they share those things. So it's unfortunate, but it is a habit and a direct reflection of people's consuming habits.
It's easy to think, how can news headlines really affect me? But negative news can actually have a surprising impact on our mental health. Have you ever felt like something was much worse in the moment, only to realize later it wasn't that bad? This is called catastrophizing. In the context of news, catastrophizing means imagining that the news is much worse than it really is. Unfortunately, many news outlets use headlines that intentionally trigger this feeling, making us worry more than we need to in order for us to click on their headlines. Graham L.C. Davey performed a research study which examined how the emotional tone of television news affects mood and the tendency to exaggerate personal worries. 3 groups of young adults viewed 14-minute newscasts edited to have either positive, neutral, or negative emotional content. The group that watched the negatively toned bulletin experienced increases in anxiety and sadness and a significantly greater tendency to catastrophize personal worries. These findings support the theories linking negative mood to increased worry. The study also suggests that negatively toned news can worsen unrelated personal concerns.
In stark contrast to negative news, there are a multitude of benefits that come with experiencing positive news. Negative news has been proven to be able to affect us not only mentally, but physically as well by raising the levels of cortisol stress hormones in our bodies. But if negative news can have mental and physical effects on our health, why can't positive news do the same? The answer is, it can. A study conducted by the University of Southampton in 2016, in which participants either kept a journal full of positive news or kept a journal full of positive news but also shared it with the people around them, the study showed that the people who shared the positive news experienced an increase in positive affect, happiness, and life satisfaction over the course of 4 weeks. This study also gave us a look at how positive news can counteract the harmful effects of negative news by decreasing the amount of stress hormones in our bodies.
I'm Amy Simpson, and I lead corporate communications and media relations at International Paper. I think our media need to take a really deliberate effort to make sure that they're covering the positive news. So if that needs to be a special section just about positive news or a special segment just on good things that are happening in our community to start, I think that's important. But what I would really like to see is for that to be the norm, that it doesn't have to be a separate section, but that it's just part of their everyday coverage.
Although the world may seem hopeless sometimes, many incredible people inspire others with positivity and encourage them to do good and make a difference in the world. One of these people is Lauren Reedy. She is the founder and principal storyteller at Forever Ready Productions, a film-making nonprofit business that helps share positive stories and inspire people to do good.
I started Forever Ready Productions on accident. I was covering nonprofit events in Memphis, so I would show up sort of like a news reporter and interview some people and put together a 1 to 2 minute video about the event. And that turned into something people actually wanted. So a lot of nonprofits were calling and saying, "Can I have one of those?" And so when I first started the business, it was really about positive news. As I've gone on over the last decade, I've recognized that stories should call people to action, but that doesn't always mean that stories are positive. You can certainly spotlight a difficult issue or a real concerning piece of society, and it can still be hopeful. It can give people enough context and information to make them really feel called to do something. And so it's shifted from being a good news, positive storyteller to being an organization that tells stories that call people to action.
Many people are dedicated to spreading positivity and inspiring others to do the same, each using their own unique platform. Coy Wire, for example, brings uplifting stories to students as the anchor of CNN 10, a news show designed for young audiences. Eric Barnes, another one of our interviewees, in addition to being the CEO of the Daily Memphian, hosts the podcast Behind the Headlines. This podcast provides in-depth explorations of the stories behind major headlines, offering listeners clear and comprehensive insights while avoiding the stress associated with headline-driven news.
I am Eric Barnes. I'm the CEO of the Daily Memphian and host of Behind the Headlines on WKNO here in Memphis and other things. We have a niche. We're not the most watched local TV show by any stretch in Memphis. Kind of in-depth, sometimes very wonky exploration of the news. It's not breaking news. It's kind of a look at things that were in the news and exposing people and organizations that maybe otherwise aren't getting attention. I wish there was more of that.
While their approaches differ, some using television, others with podcasts, their mission remains the same: to fill the world with positivity and encourage others to do the same. And they're not alone. Countless others around the world are working towards this shared goal, proving that good news and inspiration can take many forms. While consuming positive and uplifting media has many benefits, it's important to recognize the dangers of toxic positivity. While positive news can shape our mindset and influence society for the better, an excess of it can create a false sense of reality, blinding us to real issues that need attention. This overly optimistic mindset can have negative effects on mental health because it can prevent us from seeing things as they are and delay the necessary growth that comes through facing adversity. The news industry, in particular, must strike a balance. Too much negativity can be overwhelming, but too much positivity can be misleading. This is why a healthy mix of both positive and negative news is essential for a well-rounded and informed news consumption.
The problem is, there's this thing called toxic positivity. And if we only share positive things and don't acknowledge real harm and real injustice, then it's surface level, almost as bad as sensational and negative news can be. So I think there's a real balance. And if we can strike the right balance of positivity, of people doing things, taking action, making change, with the real world events that are happening right in front of us, I think that positive can win.
Mr. Miyagi once said, "Better learn balance. Balance is key." This principle applies to the news industry as well. In a world that often feels overwhelmingly negative, it can be tempting to focus only on uplifting stories. However, the core responsibility of journalism is to report the truth, whether it is good or bad. A credible news source must inform the public while holding those in power accountable. That said, News should not be entirely negative. There are countless positive events happening every day, yet they are often overshadowed by shocking or sensational stories. Striking a balance between reporting hard truths and highlighting positive developments is essential for a well-rounded, responsible news industry.
I think if our media, both locally and nationally, had channels that were either specifically dedicated to positive news or actually made an effort to cover positive news as much as they covered negative news, I think the world at large would have a better balance that represents what's actually happening in the world, which is not all negative.
In a simpler world, news can be neatly divided into positive and negative stories, keeping both journalists and audiences satisfied. However, reality is far more complex. Most news outlets struggle to balance positive and negative stories, without one overshadowing the other. But what if there is a way to present both sides simultaneously? In the field of public relations, there is a strategy that allows difficult stories to be told without focusing solely on negativity. This approach is known as solutions journalism. Solutions journalism doesn't just highlight problems. It also explores how individuals, organizations, or communities are addressing these challenges. By providing context and showcasing real-world solutions, this method ensures a more balanced and constructive approach to news. It's a powerful way to inform the public while maintaining a healthy mix of both the harsh realities and the progress being made.
What I'd love to see is solution-oriented journalism, solution-oriented articles where we're aware of what's going on, we see the tragedy, we see the problem, and we immediately know either what we can read more about, how we can help solve the problem, or provide more hope and context to the situation. One of my most frustrating pieces of negative news is that it's usually just a headline that people read, and then they don't go beyond that, they don't read for context, and they walk around thinking that the headline is the truth, instead of the headline is a piece of the rest of the story.
As we come to a close, we want to share some key takeaways from our research. Right now, the news industry thrives on negative stories because they generate the most engagement. People tend to click on them the most, making them the most profitable. Unfortunately, as a single individual, you can't completely change the way news is reported on a national scale. However, what you can control is how you consume it. There are several strategies to help protect yourself from the stress and anxiety caused by constant exposure to negative news. Staying informed is important, but it shouldn't always take priority over your well-being. Sometimes, taking a break from the news and focusing on your personal life is the best choice. One major issue in today's digital world is doom scrolling, spending excessive amounts of time consuming negative news, which can heighten fear and anxiety over time. Without healthy boundaries, this habit can take a serious toll on mental health. That's why developing coping mechanisms is essential. Strategies to manage news consumption include taking breaks or limiting your intake, engaging in relaxing or de-stressing activities after reading the news, discussing your feelings with a trusted friend or loved one, and balancing negative news with positive stories. Ultimately, while the three of us may not be able to stop the overwhelming presence of negative news at the source, we can share ways to cope with it, raise awareness of its effects, and encourage a healthier, more mindful approach to consuming media.
If you're feeling hopeless, helpless, look up, have an interaction, a conversation with someone, and I bet you'll find a little more hope.
While we may not be able to do much about it right now beyond spreading awareness, let's look ahead 5 to 10 years and imagine what could happen if we took action to address this issue at its core. Earlier, we touched on something that plays a crucial role in our final solution, and it's worth exploring further: solutions journalism. Throughout our research for this documentary, we struggled to find individuals or organizations actively working to address the root cause of the overwhelming imbalance between negative and positive news. However, solutions journalism presents a promising way to tackle many of the issues we've discussed. One of its most significant impacts would be on the mental health of those who consume excessive amounts of negative news. Unlike traditional reporting, which often leaves audiences feeling stressed and hopeless, solutions journalism provides context, progress, and potential solutions to the problems being covered. This shift in storytelling can significantly reduce the anxiety and distress caused by negative news. The main argument against this approach is that it may be less engaging and therefore less profitable for the news industry. Many outlets hesitate to adopt it because negativity attracts more views and clicks. However, the benefits of solutions journalism far outweigh the potential downsides for news companies. readers would still be drawn in by the urgency of a negative story, but instead of being left with fear and anxiety, they would walk away with a sense of hope and empowerment from hearing about real solutions. In this way, solutions journalism offers the best of both worlds, capturing attention while fostering a healthier, more constructive approach to news consumption.
Early on, investigative journalists began to serve as watchdogs for society. They reported on issues like government corruption, harsh working conditions, and racial inequality. Striving to uncover important problems in society, promote social change, and hold people accountable for their actions. The media, in a sense, is society's window to the world, and it plays a huge role in how we imagine reality. Journalists shape society's perceptions every day by what they choose to write about and also what they choose to overlook. Today, the media has become so focused on reporting problems, it has evolved into a steady flow of negativity, and a resounding 79% of Americans now think it's the journalist's job to report bad news. What influence does this negativity actually have on the world? Can you imagine a parent that tries to change a child's behavior by pointing out only his mistakes, or a manager that only dwells on her employees' shortcomings, expecting higher performance? That would be an extremely ineffective parent or a terrible manager. It doesn't work in parenting, it doesn't work in business, and for a country and ultimately the world to thrive, it won't work in journalism either.
We've talked a lot about the things that need to change in order for us to see a better future of more positive, inspiring news. But the question is, how can you help?
You need to stay in touch with us.
We all can share news with the news media. You don't have to be a major company. You don't have to be in public relations or media relations to share positive news.
And like consumers have all the power because they're the ones, if they don't click on it, if they don't go to the site, if they don't turn on their TV to that channel, those entities will not survive.
We need to ask ourselves when we read a headline, what's the more to this story? Nationally, locally, hyper-local.
You need to go on our website. You need to see the stories that we're covering and encourage us to cover more positive stories.
As a consumer, if something great is happening in your community that you know about, if you've got a teacher who's a hero or doing something fantastic, make sure that you're contacting your local reporters and letting them know about the great news that's happening.
But in the end, if consumers don't click on it, they don't follow it, people will stop doing it.
A headline is meant to draw you in, and you should click on it and read it, but you should also have a desire to dig a little bit deeper and ask why, or what, or how, or who, or what can I do?
You need to communicate with us. You need to send us emails. You need to call us on the phone. If we have a text number, send us a text. Communicate with us in person. Let us know positive stories that you are involved with and would like to see featured on the air.
The power is in the hand of the consumer. You have the power to make the change. The question is, are you willing to do it?